Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is, sorry, excuse me. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Most of the stories we see on the news come from the front lines, but rarely do we hear about the people who make those stories possible. Today's guest has spent over 3 decades behind the scenes of international journalism, working in some of the world's most complex and dangerous environments. We are joined by Amjad M. Tadros, a veteran television news producer and author of The Fixer, a journalist's accidental journey through the Middle East. His work reveals the hidden role of the fixer, the local journalist who guides global media through war zones, political tension, and history in real time. This is a conversation about journalism, truth, and the unseen stories behind the headlines. Amjad, welcome to Thought At Large. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, Amjad, before we kick things off, can you please tell us more about yourself? Usually on our podcast, I and my listeners, we want to get to know our guests on a personal level.
But my name is Amjad Tadros. I spent 33 years of my life working as a producer or a fixer for the American news organization CBS News and the program called 60 Minutes. And that allowed me to basically cover the Middle East during those years, which were very important from different parts of the world, primarily from Iraq. And I covered also the Gulf region, Yemen, and all the events leading up to the Arab Spring. And also, I did a lot of work on the concerning the 9/11 hijackers. So that was my career in two sentences.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much for letting us get to know you, Amjad. And once again, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Now, Amjad, what is a fixer? Because this is the first time I'm hearing something of this sort. What is a fixer?
Well, a fixer is basically a person that foreign news organization hire when they go to a different country, and he's like their local eyes and ears. And there is no like job description for the fixer. He's supposed to do everything from making tea, coffee, arranging interviews, book hotel rooms, airline tickets, find interviews, people to talk to, and also explain to them the local perspective of news events. So that's broadly what the name Thames Fixer means. But with time, many of my colleagues in the Arab world were not very happy to be called fixers. So they said that we don't like to be called fixers. So they start calling us field producers and producers. In fact, my last job title at CBS was senior Middle East producer, and
Wow.
that was my job. But in essence, when I wrote the book, it had a different name. It was called The Accidental Journalist. But at the end, when I realized, that was actually I was the fixer, and I always tried to be the best fixer in the business, and I never
Yes.
wanted to be a producer. So this is why I changed the name of the book and called it The Fixer.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I was starting to think maybe I had, called you something you may not like to be called. And I wanted to apologize, but I'm glad to see that you actually, prefer the
No,
name Fixer.
I never minded to be called a fixer actually because I always tried to be the best fixer in the business, and I never wanted to be a producer.
Wow.
That's
So Amjad, how did you get into this line of work? Because it seems like a very unique line of work and it definitely
well.
requires a lot of skill and know-how.
I was in the late 80s. I was sent by my father to study mechanical engineering in the UK, and they had a different plan for my life. And in 1990, I came back to Jordan, and I was supposed to go and get a job in Saudi Arabia. Well, then I landed in Jordan, and 2 days later, Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. So my Saudi visa was cancelled. I got stuck in Amman, and then I just wanted to get any job to make some money to buy a plane ticket and go back to the UK. And
Yes.
so a friend of mine told me about a news organization that they have an office at one of the hotels in Amman. So I showed up there, and they looked at me and they said, "Can you speak English?" I said, "Of course I can speak English. I'm a British graduate." And then they
Yes.
hired me for 2 days. I had no idea what to do, and that was the start of my career. as fixer and a news producer.
Wow. Now, Amjad, when it comes to international news, there are lots of things that people don't know or don't even understand. So, what is something that people don't realize about how international news is actually produced?
Well, I mean, first of all, the news comes in different ways. There's like comes in terms of reports or live reports, or through your internet now, or through Facebook or Instagram or TikTok now. So there are different ways around it. But basically, the essence of it, we as journalists, our job is to go to places and try to show the audience what we see without getting into without adding our own opinion, and that is very
Yes,
hard. I mean, we have to be very transparent and just convey to the audience what we are seeing in front of us. I always looked at journalism as being the first draft of history. Our job is just to document it and convey it to other people, and then later, some other people, whether politicians, academics, or whatever,
yes,
can take that news that we create and portray it to the audience and make sense of it. And
yes,
it's not an easy job, especially now with
definitely.
with AI coming in, and also with the demand on very fast news turnaround. And sometimes it doesn't work like this. A good story takes time. You have to go to a place, you have to understand what's going on, you have to talk to different people before starting, telling others what's happening. Unfortunately, these days, there's more emphasis on speed, and sometimes speed is
Yes,
not very necessarily a good thing, because sometimes, because you want to just get the news out quickly, you don't give it its context and its proper coverage, and that creates a lot of confusion now for the audience, because you open your feed and you get all sorts of different news coming from different places, and
yes.
people don't have context, and that creates a lot of misunderstanding sometimes.
Yes, yes, and I totally agree with you. And thank you for that wonderful response. Now, Amjad, you've worked across places like Iraq, Yemen, and Jordan. These are essentially, conflict zones. What's it like operating in those environments? And how did you balance telling the story with staying safe?
Well, I mean, safety is very important. And one of the first lessons I've learned when I was a young kid covering a street demonstration, I basically just went in and I looked at, the demonstration in the street. And there was like, usually what happens, like you have a police line up on one side and the demonstrators on the other side, and there is some space in the middle. So I would just, stupidly just walk and stood in the middle between the
Yeah,
police and the demonstrators. And one of my more experienced colleagues told me, come back, come back. If you sit here, you're going to die, and
yeah,
there's
oh my
and
God.
there is no need, and it's not good for you to go to a place and die. Our job is to go and cover the news and come back, with the news safe. So safety
Yes,
is very important. So wherever we cover the news, usually we have to be aware of where we are, aware of the danger, and try to mitigate it. That doesn't mean that it works all the time. I mean, over my career, I lost some of my friends.
oh
Some
my,
a couple of them were killed in a suicide bombing in Iraq. Uh, some, it's not an easy thing, but usually we have to measure, the risk. But safety is very important, because wherever we go, we have to come back with the news. If we don't
yes.
come back with the news, it's pointless.
Yes, yes. So Amjad, before I continue, I want to first of all apologize for, the colleagues and friends you've lost over the years. And honestly, the kind of job you do, it requires a certain level of courage and bravery. And I don't think it's something that everyone or, anyone can just jump into. It requires a lot of experience, expertise, and a certain kind of know-how. And I'm glad that you were able to do this job up until this point to where you've retired and you're currently telling us your story. And I'm just fortunate to be speaking with you today. So I
Thank you
want
very
to
much.
ask, yes, you're welcome. So I want to ask that having done this job for over decades, literally, like currently I'm just 26 years old. So you've been doing this longer than I have lived, or you've done this
Probably.
longer than I have lived,
Yeah.
which is just mind-boggling. Are there moments or experiences that have stayed with you over the years? And can you share some of them with us?
Share some of what? Sorry.
So I'm asking if there are moments or experiences that have stayed with you over the years, and can
Well,
you
I
share
mean,
them with us?
the first one of the first thing I have done is that in 1993 I was in Iraq, and while I was in Iraq, the hotel where I was staying was bombed by an American cruise missile, and
Oh my God!
I was injured and was taken to the hospital. And in the hospital, Saddam Hussein came and visited me,
Wow!
and that was
Wow!
the beginning of kind of my career. And when he came to visit me in the hospital, I took a picture with him, or not, somebody took a picture. Remember, in 1993, there were no mobile phones.
Yes,
So someone took a picture, and so I had a picture with Saddam Hussein. And that picture
wow!
allowed me to work in Iraq for years unimpeded, because, Iraq was a police state and everybody's afraid of everybody else. And the
Yes,
fact that they had this picture with Saddam, people thought I was important, so they never actually tried to challenge me, and that allowed me to work in Iraq for years unchallenged. And this is why we managed to do very, very good stories in Iraq about, different things that we won a lot of awards for because of this picture I had with Saddam. And one of
yes.
those stories was a story about a missing American pilot in Iraq. There was in 1990 there was an American pilot who was shot down over the desert of Iraq, and nobody knew what happened to him. So
Oh
many
my!
many years later, we went to Iraq and we did the story, and we discovered what happened with him. And that was a very important story. It was called The First Casualty. And so this is one of the very good stories we did. Another
Yes.
story that I like, many years later, I was in Yemen, and by chance I bumped into a young man, and it turns out that he was the personal bodyguard of Osama bin Laden from Al Qaeda.
Wow!
And
Wow!
I at the end I can manage to convince him, and we sat him down, and we interviewed him, and we put him on television. And that was, kind of very, very interesting, because for the first time people could see, quote unquote, a terrorist speaking without shouting. And that
Wow!
was a very, very interesting moment.
Yes.
So these are the stories that we have done. Also I did many other interesting stories about, the Persian Gulf, of how, the wealth in those countries, about Dubai, where it came from, why is Dubai interesting.
Yes.
uh, what else I did? I did a lot of. Okay, and the other very important story I did was about an Iraqi defector who told the Americans that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and in whose testimony the U.S. went to war in 2003. I don't know if you remember this.
I
And
I was 4 at the time, so
for at the time.
probably yeah.
So that person, basically, who told the Americans that Saddam has a factory making biological weapons in Iraq,
Wow!
nobody knew where he was. Uh, so it took me 4 years going to the 7 countries to find him. And after 4 years, I found him.
Wow!
And we interviewed him and we put him on television. And that was a very groundbreaking story as well. And all these stories, of course, I gathered them. It took me about 6 years. I sat down and I wrote a book called The Fixer.
Wow!
And I put all those stories together, and to basically try to explain to people abroad what the Middle East is all about. So, it's after 6 years, of a lot of hard work, I managed to publish this book, which you
Wow!
can buy on Amazon, by the way.
Yes, yes, that's so wonderful. Please, for everyone listening, do make sure to get a hold of Amjad's book so you can actually understand what is going on in the Middle East as opposed to all the AI videos and slops you are watching online. Okay, so
Yes.
Amjad, we given the current state of the world right now, what is the relationship like between local fixers and international journalists?
Well, usually in the news business, we work as a team, because, to make television news, you need more than one person. The correspondent, you need a cameraman, a soundman, a producer, a fixer.
Yes,
So, in most cases, we are a team, we work together, and to basically to produce a story. And in most cases, the relationship is very professional and very cordial. because everybody needs the other. We cannot you cannot do it on your own. This is
Yes.
different than being, for example, a print journalist, where you just can have a piece of paper and pen, and you go out and do your own stories. But with television, it takes more than one person to do it, and that's why if the team is not coordinated together and has experience, it's not very easy to do it. And especially when you go to places like a war zone or dangerous places, there should be a level of trust between the different parts of the team, that we all trust each other and understand that we all work for the same cause, so to speak. We're all on the same page, and
Yes.
that doesn't come easy. It comes with experience, and with a lot of experience, actually.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that response, Amjad. Now, Amjad, you've spent decades being a journalist and being a fixer. Now, do you think the global media always captures the full truth of what is happening around the world, or the truth is usually filtered?
Unfortunately, not. I mean, we try. Most of my colleagues and the journalists, most of them are honorable people, and they try. But the problem with the news, like, it's not easy to explain to an audience the history of the Middle East in 2 minutes. It's impossible, actually.
Yes,
And
yes,
now
very
look,
much.
like what happens happening in Iran, for example. Now, Iran is a
Yes.
huge country. There's 90 million people living there. It has 7,000 years of history, lots of
Wow.
backstories, and you cannot, explain it to somebody in 10 minutes or in 5 minutes or 2 minutes, actually, now, or a 30-second, video clip,
Yes.
because it's very complicated. So, so you need to, try. You have to try, but is it easy? No, and sometimes we miss stuff out, and usually journalists are accused of highlighting news more than it should be. For example, if you go to a country and you see people demonstrating on the street and screaming loud and so on, that's a good picture. So you need to start filming them and talking to them. But are they representing the whole country? Probably not, because the people who are
Yes.
sitting at home doing nothing are not
Yes.
represented. And usually the people who scream the loudest get on television,
Yeah.
and that's not fair. So you have to
Yeah.
always be aware of that and do not try to get a small minority to dictate the opinion of the majority, so to speak.
Yeah, that's essentially propaganda.
Yeah, all of that's propaganda. And in most cases, the people who agree actually to speak and stand in front of a camera, they have agendas. I
Yes.
mean, an ordinary person who's just doing his day job, has no incentive to come and
Exactly.
to do an interview with you. Usually the people who have an agenda or they have something to say or they're paid to do so, they would
Yes.
actually talk to you. And you always have to be aware of that by balancing out your report, by not giving those people all the time, because others who have not been there did not speak. And
Yes.
I always looked at my job over those years, and I always wanted to get what we call the man on the street to speak, because most of the politicians they have a lot of advisors and they have media outlets and they have PR agencies and they have
Yes.
whatever people who tell them what to say and what not to say. And but the man on the street, who usually is the victim and who pays the price for most of the events, has no outlet. And if we don't give him the chance to speak his point of view, which is important, will be neglected.
Yes. Oh, wow. Amjad, having listened to you all this while, I have come to realize that being a journalist, or, in this case, being a fixer, is really not an easy job. It requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of expertise. It requires a lot of experience and, of course, a very, very sharp mind to do this. Now, how has journalism evolved over the past 30 years from your experience?
Me or journalism in general?
Journalism in general, and
Well,
also from your experience.
journalism has changed because of the advancement of technology. Like when we
Yes.
started, the way you do news, you have to travel to a place. We had to carry very heavy equipment. We have to carry satellite dishes to be
Yes.
able to communicate and broadcast the news. And now with your mobile phone, you can just go live and transmit to the world what you see, and
Yes.
that created a lot of misconceptions in a way, because there are many people who are what they call citizen journalists, who are just
Yes.
basically people with mobile phones running around,
Yeah.
start broadcasting news
Recording everything.
and producing. And I'm not, I mean, they do an important job.
Yes.
I'm not saying no, but at the same time, there is context, and sometimes they don't give you the context. They just give you
Yes.
what they see, and sometimes it's not very accurate, and that creates confusion, and it creates sometimes hatred. It's not something that is you still need the context.
Yes. There's a reason why it needs to be standardized, and it allows for context. That's right. But when it's not standardized, anybody can just pick up their mobile device and record anything and just say something about whatever is going on. Like you said, it
Yes,
could breed hate crime, hatred and whatnot.
exactly, if there is no context.
Yes. Now, Amjad, I've been working towards this question since the beginning of our conversation. Now,
Yes,
lots of people misunderstand what is going on in the Middle East. I myself, I think I even don't know what is going on there. I try
i
to follow up.
I don't know either.
Oh my. I try to follow up. I try to watch the news. I try to read articles. But even
Yes,
then, I don't know what to believe, what not to believe. But I believe we can trust your judgment and your wisdom because you've been doing this job for quite a while and you have the experience to be able to, know what is to an extent, know what is true and what is not. So can you just give us a rundown of what is currently going on in the Middle East and
well,
what you think the end results
you
would
have
be?
to understand one thing about the Middle East. The Middle East is a very ancient part of the world.
Yes,
There are a lot of tradition. There is a lot of religion, and people have care a lot about their dignity and the way they are being perceived.
yes,
And so, a lot of times, what you see on television, it does not really reflect what's really happening, because people like to put up a show, so to speak,
yes,
to show their dignity, uh, more than anything else. Like, for example, in many incidents when you have war, usually people are afraid, and so a lot of people in the Arab world do not like to show that they are afraid.
yes,
Okay, for example, the war that happened in Iraq in 2003 when the Americans came to occupy Iraq, the Iraqi government and Saddam Hussein and his people were always putting up all these statements and so on to show that they are defiant and they are going to fight and blah blah blah. And that showed them, like, that they are ready to for war, and that was way far away from the truth. In fact, they were terrified, and they tried to evade the. In fact, they
yeah,
tried to evade the war as much as they can. Okay, but they're not going to go on television and say this.
yeah,
Okay,
definitely not.
they were going to say something else. If you go, for example, the ordinary people will be, the first thing they do when they hear that there is some danger happening, where do they rush to? They rush to the supermarket to buy food. Okay,
Yes,
and that creates a lot of havoc at the supermarket. So when you go to a supermarket or to a bakery and see a long line of people waiting for bread or for food, and you film them, they're not very happy about it, because they don't want to show you that they are afraid or they're this, that, and the other. Meanwhile,
yes,
if they go into a demonstration and start yelling and screaming, they will let you film them, but they will not let you film them, standing in line waiting for bread, because
yes,
they feel humiliated. So you
yes,
have to see, but most of them, they are going to go and stand in line, and when there's a war happening, mothers usually are afraid for their children.
yes,
They don't want them to go to war, and but if you go to a mother with a camera and say, are you really afraid, and you want to keep your kid at home and don't want them to go to fight, she's not going to tell you yes, because then they know then they think that she's a coward and their son is a coward and he's not manly
yes,
enough. Meanwhile, they are afraid. They're like every other person in the world. Nobody wants to go and kill himself or die for stupid reason
yes,
or no reason.
e-
And
exactly.
so people have to realize that not everything you see on television or on your mobile screen now is the truth. This is why I keep telling you you need to have context of
Yes.
events, and
Yes.
sometimes it's not easy.
Wow. Thank you so much for that wonderful response, Amjad. Now, Amjad, I want to know, why did you finally decide to tell your story in the Fixer?
Well, first of all, after 33 years doing this job, I thought it was enough. So I was offered an early retirement and I retired. So
Yes.
that's one. Two, I used to come back from my work and I used to sit down, and I'm a storyteller. So I used to sit down and tell my friends all these stories. And all my friends were telling me, Amjad, you can't keep those stories to yourself. You have to write it down because people will forget them. So they keep pushing me to write it.
Wow.
And more importantly, I wrote the book for the Western audience to understand what the Middle East is all about, because I'm afraid that history keeps repeating itself. And my book,
Yes.
has a big part about what happened in Iraq before the 2003 war and after, and how the country disintegrated and how the civil war started. And I thought, people have to learn and understand what's going on, so hopefully we don't commit the same mistakes again.
Yes.
Unfortunately, now history is repeating itself. I mean, there is a war now happening with Iran. They're talking about change of regime. I have no idea how they're going to do that. Looking at what happened in Iraq in 2003, which was a total flop,
Yes.
and now we hear the same. It's the same scenario with different actors. More
Yes.
important, and also another reason that helped me write, that pushed me to write the book. Also, the media in the United States, especially the television news, has kind of disintegrated and collapsed because of all the pressure and accusations that was leveled against them by the government, which is unfair. That they told them that we are fake news and all these things.
Yeah.
And no, that's not true. Most of the people I worked with were serious journalists. They're honorable people. We did our duty. We went to different kinds of parts of the world to try to convey to the audience what we have seen and what's really happening there. And to be told that we are fake news and we make up stuff is absolutely not true. And I
Yes.
thought it was kind of a duty for me to document what we did, so people can realize, how hard was it and how much we worked to get this news out, and to be accused by this is so unfair.
Wow. Amjad, this has been a very powerful and eye-opening conversation. Not just about stories, but about the stories behind those stories, about journalism, about the truth, and about having context when it comes to, global
So
perspective.
please
I think.
get your audience to go on Amazon, go for The Fixer by Amjad Tadros, and buy a
Yes.
copy. It's available in hardback, paperback, and e-copy,
Yes.
ebook, and review it. And that makes a big difference because I want other people to learn more about the book.
Yes, and for more information, you can visit Amjad's website,
Yes.
www.amjadtadros.com/books, to get copies of all his books. Once again, it's been a pleasure to have you on my podcast, Amjad. Thank you for sharing your experience, your wisdom, your insights, and your expertise. And before we wrap up, do you have any like finishing words, any food for thought you want to leave for I and my audience?
Well, I hope that people understand that. Okay, when I was writing the book, my 6-year-old niece, looked at me and she said, "Uncle, what is your book is all about?" And I told her my book is about war. And the first line of the book is actually part of a poem, which I'm going to
Yes.
read for you. And it says, "War is only what you have known and tasted. No narrative can describe it well." And I
Wow.
tried in my book to explain to people what war is all about and how horrific war is, and hopefully people can avoid going to war.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Amjad. Those were some, I
All right,
don't even know what to say. It's mind blowing. I actually felt that. Wow, it's been a
all right.
pleasure to have you on my podcast. Thank you so so much. Please do
Thank you
have
very
a
much.
wonderful day and do take care of yourself.
Thank you.
All right.